Every Thursday night, 9 p.m., Iconic Cafe hits the digital radio airwaves with the best in home interviews and cooking. Be sure to check out Iconic Cafe Mishawaka Facebook page for upcoming and archive shows. Now that's iconic.
Come back to Mishawaka for some home cooking, whether you're out late at night or up early in the morning. Featuring Dog and Suds root beer, iconic cupcakes, homemade biscuits and gravy. The Iconic Cafe, 215 North Main Street, Mishawaka.
Whoa. Well, that was Mr. Southside Denny. How you doing, Denny? Doing great, Bruce. How about yourself?
Always a pleasure. Brings back some great memories. And of course, welcome to Iconic Radio. Glad to have you on, my friend.
Glad to be here. And just to say, this is our second radio show together.
That is true.
The first Iconic, but our second.
That's right. We'll get into that. But first, I got to have Bill pay the bills here. So appreciate everyone listening. And, of course, our sponsors, Phoenix Grill, Open Jam Thursday, Mulligan's Island Friday, and Saturday, Red Alert back on. Cheers Pub, of course, Thursday night Open Jam. Friday, Killed the Rabbit, and Saturday, Fortune 4000 Glow Party. Five-star Justin. Nothing on Thursday, Friday, Jacob Bryant, and Saturday, American Young. And tonight, Bill will be on with Radio Classics at 11 p.m. Amos and Andy, Marriage Proposal Mix-Up, and Goes to the Lawyer's Office. And those were on air at 6/29/1929. And, of course, the classics are always brought to you by the Phoenix Bar and Grill. Well, as Denny said, this is our second show, and it kind of ages us, but our first show goes way back, I'm sure in the 80s, early 80s. I don't know the exact date. Do you?
Nope, I couldn't tell you.
Okay, but I love this story, and I won't take too much of the time, but I had a show on WAMJ, if anyone remembers that. That was off of Edison and Hickory, and it was called Shark Radio. And my spot, being as good as I was, started, I think, at 1 o'clock at night. So that was my spot, and it's kind of like what I do now. I love just meeting people and interviewing. And I wasn't having much luck with musicians. I would ask them, and it always came up like, well, what's it going to pay me kind of thing, you know? And, of course, I didn't have any money then, so I couldn't pay them. And I've always went out, was a big fan of Denny's, and I think I was at WRBR's. I think is when I asked you. I think you were walking up on the bar that night and doing your thing and stuff. And even before I could finish begging, you said, yeah, sure. And from that day on, I just thought, you know, this is someone that I want to devote to. And I always have for you, Denny, because I really think the best of you. So we'll get on with the interview. Probably what people want to know, and I do, is how'd you even get started in guitar?
Well, I got started, actually, I kind of wanted to play the saxophone when I was a kid in the school band. And then the band director, it all started because they used to do these tests in school. You know, they'd make sounds in your ears through headphones, and you'd raise your hand, whichever hand, to answer their questions and stuff. And so they told my parents that, you know, your son has an exceptional ear. Oh. And we'd like for him to be in the band if he's interested. So I was like, well, yeah, I'd like to play a saxophone. I don't know why I thought it was cool, you know. And then the band director broke my heart and said, we already have too many saxophone players. We want somebody to play the trombone. And at that time, the trombone was like bigger than me. Yeah. And I was like, what? You know, I don't want to do that. And so I did. And then maybe a couple of years went by, and I remember one day riding in the car with my parents. I think we were going grocery shopping or something like that. And the Steamroller Blues by Elvis Presley came on the radio in the car. And I remember leaning up in between my parents and saying, hey, you guys, I think I'd like to learn to play the guitar. You know, they're both looking like, you know, what? Where did this one come from? I said, yeah, like this guy is playing right now. I'd like to be able to do that. You know, and not even realizing at the time that it was pretty hardcore blues.
Right, right.
You know, and it just struck something with me. And yeah, I ran with it from there. They still didn't take me serious, and I don't blame them either, because at that point I was all about basketball and baseball. That was my whole world, and riding a bicycle, you know, that was about it. And then a kid down the street loaned me a guitar. He had a guitar, he wasn't playing it, and he was actually a friend of my older brother, Mike. And he says, well, Denny can use my guitar if he wants to. It's just sitting here collecting dust. So I did, and I didn't know anything about the guitar. I didn't know how to tune it. I didn't know anything. But I started playing it, and I'd play it every night, and basically until I'd pass out. I'd wake up in the mornings sometimes with the guitar laying on top of me and going, hey, what happened? You know? And then I started making sounds that made sense somehow or other, and then that caught my parents' attention. They're like, well, maybe this isn't just some passing thing, you know, so they got me some lessons, and the rest is history.
You know, so the parents were kind of a big influence on you.
Oh, yeah. My parents weren't musicians, but there was always music playing in the house. And my mom was really, really big into Elvis. And my dad was more on the countryside. He really liked Hank Williams and Johnny Cash. And looking back on it at the time, I remember I didn't like the countryside of it. But now I realize that was an important part of my musical formation, because growing up here, we were kind of in the middle of a bunch of different worlds. We were so close to the Chicago blues thing, and at the same time, the country thing was just below us, you know, and we were getting all of that constantly. And at that time, I'm showing my age here, but at that time, I remember when I was a kid, we used to listen to WLS out of Chicago.
I was just thinking the same
Yeah,
thing.
that was the cool station to listen to.
It was.
And I remember you'd listen to WLS, and they would play an Elvis song. Then they'd play Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Then they'd play ZZ Top. Then they'd play Frank Sinatra. You know, and it just went on and on and on like that. It was such a wide span of music, to where today it's like you've got a blues station, a rock station, a hip-hop station. I just think a lot got lost in that. It's like, well, why not? And that's the way I still approach music today. I'm considered a blues player, but I feel like I'm influenced by everything I hear. I love all kinds of music.
Oh, and I think hearing you play, too, it all comes out. I mean, I look at it, too, as kind of a jazz, you know, musician, too. You really got some great lines when it comes to that and stuff. What was your first guitar you got? Did your parents buy you one, or?
Yeah, my parents bought me a guitar, and I did the yard work that summer to pay for the guitar.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've still got the guitar. It was a we weren't aware at the time exactly what it was, but it was a 1961 Gibson SG Junior, they call them now. It was a Les Paul Junior, but in the shape of a Gibson SG. That was before they came out with the actual model that they called an SG.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, Gibson made Les Pauls in that shape in, I think it was 60, 61, and 62. And Les Paul got angry about it. He said, if you guys aren't going to make those the way I designed them, I want you to take my name off it.
Oh, so that was the...
So they went back to making them the old way, but at the same time, they're like, well, geez, we've created this great new model. So they just kept making them and called it an SG for whatever reason. It must stand for something, but I don't know what.
So you started out with electric before acoustic kind of thing? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I played electric for years before I ever even touched an acoustic.
Wow, okay. What kind of amps did you have? You still got your old amp, or?
Oh, no. I remember my first amp was a Kingston.
Wow.
You know, and it was fine for learning how to play, but it certainly wasn't anything you'd take to a stage.
Definitely. Well, Denny, hey, we're going to take a quick break. This is Iconic Radio. We'll be back with Southside Denny. A little Moonlight Drive with the Doors. All right, we're back on Iconic Radio here with Southside Denny. I had a little sticks happening for you, so we're back on. You know, Denny, I want to get back into, we talked about how you started. A big thing, too, is your influences. I remember Vegetable Buddies days, and your song Sliding is still one of my favorite, but you mentioned a lot of the musicians in there that really came about for you.
Right. Like I mentioned earlier, the song by Elvis was what kind of sparked me, and that guitar player was a guy named James Burton.
Yes.
And he was really a great player. Actually, I think he's still alive and still playing. But anyway, shortly after that, when I started playing, it was the British guys that, which I guess for probably everybody my age, that's kind of what happened. And mostly for me, it was Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. I really liked them a lot, and then those guys, by listening to them, I started realizing that the songs of theirs that I liked the most were blues songs. And then by reading interviews and listening to those guys, they basically woke me up to the idea that the guys I really wanted to listen to were just 90 miles west of here in Chicago.
That's right.
Which is kind of strange, you know, but that kind of happened to everybody. It was like the people from England turned us on to our own people that were getting overlooked. So then I started listening to Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy and Luther Allison, who was probably my biggest influence because I had a lot of personal contact with him as well. And we're doing a show this summer with his son, Bernard.
Oh, no kidding.
Which will be a lot of fun.
Where's that going to be at?
At the Firefighters Blues Fest.
Okay. Is that in LaPorte? Will that
No,
be?
it's in Crumstown.
Oh, okay. Where can people get tickets for that? On your website, or do they got a Shane? Do they got a Shane's
Yeah,
website?
if you punch in South Bend Firefighters Blues Fest, I'm sure you'd get directed to a website or something.
Now, did you know his son when you were, hanging out with Luther?
Well, I met him after that. We played together one time at the Center Street Blues Cafe.
That brings back some memories.
Yeah. And so, yeah, those were my biggest influences. And the influences, I mean, I could go on and on. There was Lonnie Mack was a huge influence. And also because I had a lot of personal contact with him, we did a lot of shows together in the 80s. And so I spent a lot of time hanging out with him. And Johnny Winter and Roy Buchanan were really huge influences. And it goes on and on up till now. You know, the last few years, I really got interested in the gypsy jazz stuff.
Yeah, well, you used to play a Django Reinhardt. Do you still play him and stuff?
Yeah, I do him sometimes in my solo show. And there's a couple other guys. There's Angelo Debar and Birelli Legren. They're both French gypsy players. So I really like that stuff too. And I've always been open to all that stuff because it's for sure I'm never going to become a gypsy jazz player. I mean, I just don't have that thing in me. But from learning some of their songs and doing a lot of listening, after a while, without even realizing it, some of that starts trickling into my blues, you know, and now I like using like a minor sixth chord, for example, a lot, which I don't think anybody uses in blues, but I am. So it's all good. I think people need to be open-minded to everything.
Yes, I agree totally with that. You talk about the bands you used to play with, too. What did you start out with? Your own band first, or you join a band?
Well, the first band that ever really did much was a group called Smokestack Lightning. That was me, Larry Barber, and Rick Bowl. Okay. And then that went through several different transformations. And we ended up getting hired by a guy called Duke Tomato to be his band. And then it was less than a year I stuck with that, and Rick and Larry decided to stay with him, and I decided I wanted to do my own music. So that's when I started Southside Denny and the Skin Tones, and we made a couple of albums, and we had a decent regional hit with a song called Ethanol Stinks.
Yes.
And that's when we started touring Canada. And then that group disbanded because we were starting to travel and they both wanted to just kind of stay local. And I was really frustrated because I thought, you got to be kidding me. We just got rolling here, you know. So then I started hanging out in Chicago and playing with Chicago players and just moving further and further out. Yeah.
Was it hard going on your own, or was that an easy move to make?
It was scary because all of a sudden I'm on a stage with people I really don't even know.
Oh, yeah. I didn't
and we're traveling around the countryside and going into Canada a lot too. And it was a great experience. It was really fun, you know. I always, I have the same attitude with that I do as the listening and the influence part. You know, when you get to a certain level of player, a lot of artists will say, you know, they'll present a band with a list. We're doing these 25 songs, and I want them played like that, kind of a deal. But with me, I always like to take those guys. It's like, well, these guys are great players. Let's see what kind of grooves they do the best, and then we'll go that way. because I don't care if it's good, it's fun.
Right. And you've always had that attitude, and I think that's what it's all about. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's what keeps your music so alive. And, over the years, I got to admit, it's probably been a year since I've really listened to it. I think last summer we were in LaPorte, I think was
Right.
the blues thing and stuff, and you were playing with your kids, which was fantastic.
Yeah, we haven't brought that up yet, but that's my biggest thing that I'm doing right now is the band with Lori and Philip. We call it the Snyders. And that has just in the last year musically really started to take off. And my dream would be that could really take off good enough to where we could do nothing but that. But they've got the school thing too.
Well, yeah, they got to get through school. And you got to admit, I mean, Philip is still in high school.
Right, Philip's only 14, so I can't push the issue too
You're
far.
doing the Joe Jackson kind of thing here.
Oh, no. But that's why I'm traveling around now doing solo shows. Because I still really love that side too. I love the acoustic side, and it opens me up to different things. So it's good to have a balance of both.
Yeah, I know. And you've always, and like you said, you've always been open. And what I always admire about you too, you're accessible. If someone would come and see you play, you hang around, you visit, you talk with them, and I mean, a lot of musicians don't do that. They're out the door or, back wherever. And you always are very personable with people, which I respect. I think that's fantastic with you.
Well, I like doing that, and all of my influences were like that. They were really open with me. Like Luther Allison was really, really generous with me. And I always felt like, the same thing that he did. It's like, if you've got this talent, you need to share it, and you need to make yourself available. And these days, especially, I think more than ever, people expect that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we've got all the social media and we've got all this stuff, and it's like, you're going to go nowhere if you're not going to communicate with people.
But I mean, too, even though with Facebook and all that, but I mean, even after a gig, you'll hang out and talk to people, one-on-one, which to me is what it is all about. I so loved, to hear you play and then be able to go up and just talk to you. And of course, I always ask, wow, what amp are you using? And you probably hear that 10,000 times, but
it's important.
Yeah, it is. I mean, really. And you make people feel important about it. And to me, that's what it's all about too. So, well, Denny, we're going to take another quick break. Have you drink a little more wine real quick. Let me go over XCRS weekly events real quick for Bill. Phoenix Grill Friday, Mulligan's Island, Saturday Red Alert, Cheers Pub Friday, Kill the Rabbit, and Fortune 4000 Glow Party. 5-Star Friday, Jacob Bryant, and Saturday American Young. And we'll be right back. This is Iconic Radio. All right, we're back on Iconic Radio. As usual, during our breaks, we always get some great conversation, and I'm begging Denny to talk about Luther Allison's story, which I never knew, but it's fantastic. So, Denny, please take it away.
Well, it was just over the years, he was a huge influence on me, and he was always really positive and encouraging all the time. And actually, almost all the Chicago blues guys I met were like that. In that
no
time.
Kidding. Okay.
Yeah, there was also a guy, Lefty Diz and Johnny Dollar, that would always call me up to the stage if they'd see me in the audience in Chicago.
No kidding.
Yeah. And but Luther was extra special. He just had something about him. It was almost spiritual or something. And I've heard lots of other people say the same thing after he died, that I always thought maybe I was unique, but then I started finding out there's people all over the planet that had these kind of experiences with him. So he was like really a heavy person. And so we were talking about this story. Luther moved away to Europe, and he was gone for a few years. And then I saw somewhere advertised that he was going to play in Kalamazoo, Chicago, and somewhere else. And the night he played in Kalamazoo, I wasn't playing. So I went. It was like, well, I have to go. And they took a break, and I went into the dressing room, and, he was really glad to see me, and we talked for a while, and then we went up to play, and I think, his band, they were all guys from France at that time, and I'm pretty sure all the equipment was rented because it wasn't what he would usually use. But anyway, so I walk up on the stage, and I realized when I got there was just one guitar and one amp. So I just kind of looked at him, and I held out my hands, I said, what do you want me to do here, He takes the guitar off, and he hands it to me, and he says, I'm going to sing for a while. He says, you're the guitar player right now. I said, okay.
It just blows me away.
So he counts off the song. He yelled out, let's do a slow blues in whatever key, and he tells me, he says, you take it off the top. And I was like, okay. So we started, and I played 3 or 4 notes, and I remember him looking down at me, and he just yelled, over the music. He says, now I remember why I remember you. But he was always like that. He was always so encouraging, and really wanted to see you keep doing that.
I know. That's fantastic. Gosh.
That's what I try to do with people too, and especially with Lori and Philip, They're so talented that I really want to see them keep doing it.
Well, and I think you make it easy for them to do it. You're great with them. You're a great musician. You give them freedom, to play and stuff. And really, it just looks like a bright future with them and stuff. And did they come to you to play with you, or did you ask them? How did that even come about?
Well, it started just Lori and I, because she always sang ever since she was a little kid. And all of a sudden, she wanted to start singing some songs, so I'd play them. And then Philip also had always played percussion. He had a drum set. A buddy of mine gave him a drum set when I think he was 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, okay.
And you could tell he had it in him. It wasn't just some little kid pounding on stuff, And so then Philip jumped in, and he's like, well, all of a sudden it turns into an electric band, because when the drums get involved,
Yeah, it has to be electric.
Yeah. And then Lori announced that she wanted to learn how to play the bass.
I remember that.
And I thought that was kind of like, well, come on. I felt like it was the trombone thing with me. The bass was bigger than her, I said, you sure you want to play a bass? She says, yeah. So anyway, eventually she started playing bass, and it just kind of happened. It wasn't a plan at all of me or them, I don't think. It was just after a while, I remember saying to him, I was like, you guys, this is really starting to sound like something really good. Do you want to go further and make an album and stuff? And they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Was this over dinner?
No, it was probably in the basement.
I know. I'm just kidding.
But every now and then people ask me, some people think that maybe I force them, like the Jackson 5 thing or something.
That's why I brought that up.
People ask me if I pay them, do you pay them to do that? I'm like, well, yeah, I pay them like I always paid any musicians.
It's room and board, man.
Yeah. But I never have to push them. They love it. They absolutely, they push me half the time.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Yeah. Come on, Dad, let's practice kind of thing. Or
Yeah, and they're really into it, and it's the most fun I've ever had playing music in my life, I think.
I know, and I can tell. Really, it's I always use the word blessed, but you've been blessed. I don't know of any other musicians, I guess, that are fortunate to be able to play with their kids and have so much fun.
The Kinseys.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the Kinsey Report.
They're about the only other one in the blues world I can think of.
Is the dad still alive, though? Or okay.
No, he died a long time ago, and they called him Big Daddy Kinsey.
That's right.
It was originally Big Daddy Kinsey and the Kinsey Report.
That's right. And they were out of, LaPorte, weren't they?
They were from Gary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think they still live in Gary. Okay. I'm not sure.
And you guys you've wrote some songs together. How does that go about? Is it something you come up with, or Lori? Is it
Well, the first album was pretty much my tunes.
Okay.
And then after that, they got a couple of years of playing experience under their belts, and Lori started going to music school and studying theory. And Philip knows some theory now too. He plays in his school jazz band, and now the ideas are coming from everywhere. Some of the second album, there's a couple songs that Lori flat out wrote all by herself, the whole thing, and just kind of presented it to me and said, "Hey, I got this song." And some of them, a couple of them, where she had a bass line, so I built things around it. And one of the coolest songs on the album is an instrumental called Funky G, and the whole thing happened because of Philip's drum beat. He was playing a drum beat one day down in the basement, and I ran down there and I just asked him, I said, "What is that you're playing?" He says, "Oh, I don't know, it's just a beat, and I said, "Keep playing it." I picked up a slide guitar and just started playing with it until I came up with something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And then you guys recorded, it was up in the mountains, right?
I mean, in Morin Heights, Quebec. We live in Montreal, by the way, for people that don't know. Morin Heights is a northern suburb of the city, and it used to be there used to be a really famous recording studio in Morin Heights. Paul McCartney recorded there, Bruce Springsteen. I mean, like, it was a who's who of the music world was recording, and eventually the place went out of business. And now this is just a guy that we happened to stumble across, and he has a small studio there in Morin Heights.
Oh, wow.
But it's funny because there, people will say, "Where are you recording at?" And I'll say, "Morin Heights," and their eyes get big. "Morin Heights?" I'm like, no, not that Morin Heights.
It's like Sun Studios when we went there.
Yeah.
And what do you got this summer? I mean, I know you guys got a lot of touring gigs coming up. Are you going to be back in town during the summer with the kids?
Yeah, we've got right now we have 17 dates in July and August, and most of July we're going to be around here in Indiana and Michigan. And right here, there's still more that are going to come in. I'm still waiting on answers from people and still trying to hash out some things. I have been this week while I've been here too. But as far as South Bend, we're playing the South Bend Firefighters Blues Festival on July 25th. And that should be a lot of fun. It'll be with Bernard Allison and Smokin' Joe Kubek.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And what's your website? Or you got a website and Facebook?
Yeah, our website is I'm having trouble saying W's. The3snyders.com. And it's the number 3, not the word 3.
Okay.
So it's the3snyders.com.
And then Facebook would be your name?
Well, there's several Facebook pages.
Oh,
there's
wow.
Snyder's Music is the one of our band. And I also have one, Southside Denny Snyder. And I have a Denny Snyder one. And Lori and Philip have them too. They have their own personal ones too.
Well, you've always been good at that. In fact, one of your songs about so many hats, but I've always admired you too, because you really do market it. And like you said it just in the earlier, it's just important to get out to people. I mean, it's part of your job and you enjoy doing it, which I think is important too. It's, because you do have a gift, and the more people that get to, I guess, see it, hear it, the better it is with that. So
yeah, that's what we're really focusing on now, is just being seen and heard, and in Quebec and in Ontario and in Indiana and Michigan and anywhere else we can be heard. That's what we need to do right now, and just because those seeds really spread. Yes. I know from my past experience, just what happened in the old days. And then I kind of backed off when we started having kids, but now I'm ready to go back to work.
All right. With that, we'll take a break. This is Iconic Radio. We'll be right back with you. Got a little Eddie Cochran, a little something else. All right. During break again, Iconic Radio asked Denny to play lots of hats. So with further ado, this is Mr. Southside Denny with lots of hats.
used to have a job, was as easy as could be. I'd punch in at 7, punch back out at 3. I'd leave the place a mess, go pick up my check, let the office find me more work while I catch up on my rest. It was terrible. Then one day, I decided to be a musician, to lead a life of fun and deep sea fishing. But to my surprise, I was forced to survive. If you wanna make a living, you got to wear lots of hats. Yes, lots of hats. That's where it's at. 'Cause I ain't no boss man to give you some cash. It ain't about being some cool cat. If you wanna get by, you got to wear lots of hats. Now, I'm management, I'm booking, I'm songwriter too, road manager and driver. I bet you think I'm through. I handle complaints with lots of restraint. I'm accounts payable, I'm publicity and shipping too. Peut-être tu penses je suis fou. I said, you might think I'm crazy, but don't misunderstand. I love to play solo or band. Wouldn't change at any cost. My Benny's long been lost. So take my advice, you ain't gonna get fat. If you wanna make a living, you got to wear lots of hats. Crook, or you might be a hero, but if you're not born rich, you know your number is 0. That's the way it is here. What can I do about that? If you wanna get by, you got to wear lots of hats. Yes, lots of hats. That's where it's at. 'Cause there ain't no boss man to give you some cash. You won't see welcome on a corporate mat. If you wanna make a living, you got to wear lots of hats. Wear lots of hats. Wear lots of hats. Wanna make a living, you got to wear lots of hats.
Thank you, Denny. You know, what do you got, 9 or 10 albums now?
10.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone has, you know, what I always like when you write it, it's always about the time you're in. You know, each album has, you know, kind of your perspective of in the moment with that. And
yeah.
I mean, does that just come naturally to you? You know, just.
Yeah, I seem to write. I like to write about things that are going on, but not necessarily always in my life, but even sometimes in other people's lives around me. They spark something, you know, I see something. And yeah, I guess I never really thought about that, but that's true. Most of my albums are usually about what's going on around me at that time.
Yeah, you know, like I always like Roots and Branches, Rendezvous Blues, and I mean, every album, like I said, it's almost like a part of you of history with it and stuff. Mm-hmm. And again, they can go to the website. The albums are for sale on the website.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then at the shows, you sell them too and stuff.
Always.
Oh, that's fantastic with it. What else did I have for you? I lost let me do some thank yous real quick, Denny. That's what I wanted to do. Of course, I always want to thank Adam Nelson. Denny, take a look at this menu here and let me know what you think about that. That's Adam Nelson. He's the one recording the shows for us, puts it on Facebook. He's the one that designs the menus for Iconic Cafe, and he does a fantastic job. You can go to his Facebook page or website. He does great. Of course, I always want to thank Brenda Ford, my partner at Iconic Cafe. Does a fantastic job with cooking. She made homemade lasagna last night. And, of course, we got the South Bend Record CD show coming up this Sunday. It'll be March 29th from 11 to 5 p.m., and it's at the Comfort Suites on Cleveland Road. And they always have a drawing there. And it's a Wildwood's huge garage sale, so please check it out. Of course, Bill McDonald is always there, picks up his CDs and everything happening. So, but yeah, anything about the menu you can say?
Well, it is beautiful.
It's perfect.
Did a beautiful job on it. It looks really good. It's very clear. I'm just wondering if your Denver omelet really comes from Denver. I hope not.
The cheese. The cheese does. On the way over, we were talking about you're playing your old Strat again and Marshalls, which I think is a great story, too. Why don't you let us in on that?
Yeah, well, my old guitar that I played for a long, long time was the guitar that I played that kind of made my reputation and first few albums, and it was kind of a part of me. And then my left arm started getting sore, and I thought it was because of the radius of the fretboard. Maybe I just played too long. And well, at first I started freaking out because I thought, well, maybe I'm getting tendonitis and I'm going to have to quit playing or something.
Has that ever happened to you? Any hand injuries or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, not so far. Knock on wood.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah. And because I'd play other Stratocasters and it wouldn't hurt. So I thought, well, it's something to do with that guitar. So I ended up just putting it away. I put it in the case and I put it in the closet. And every now and then I'd dig it out again every now and then. And just play it a little bit. And it would always, same scenario, it would feel great for 15 minutes and then my arm would start hurting again. And I'd put it away. So I have a little guitar school and repair shop in Montreal. So this guy brings me a Stratocaster and asks me if I can do a setup on it. And I'm like, well, sure, no problem. So I asked him, do you use the vibrato on it? He says, no. I said, well, if you don't mind, the first thing I'm going to do is tighten down the vibrato since you never use it, and the bridge won't move, and that way it'll stay in tune better. And he says, no problem. So the guy leaves, and I tighten up the vibrato, and then I play it, and it was like, ouch, man, that hurts. I was like, that's kind of weird. So then I loosened it back up, and it was like, doesn't hurt. And then it was like, light bulb. I ran downstairs and grabbed my old Strat, and sure enough, it'd been so long ago, I forgot. I'm not sure who did it, but somebody, it wasn't me, I didn't work on guitars then, but somebody had it solid against the body, clamped down. And so I loosened it up and then started playing it. It was like, wow, it doesn't hurt anymore. So now I'm back to playing that guitar that I missed all those years. But I think I had to go through the other stuff to come back to it.
Well, that guitar always had mojo. I mean,
Yeah, and it still does. It's got serious mojo.
And you're back with the Marshall amps. Well, you got two of them. You got the one where you got the Blues Award, the little one, right? Yeah, what award was that?
That was the Old Harv Award for achievement in blues in the Michiana area.
I know.
Or for supporting blues or achievement, something like that.
Right.
Or maybe all of the above. I don't know.
And how many years ago was that?
That was, I think it was 2000.
Oh, wow. 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember when you got the amp, it was that little Marshall, but
yeah, and I didn't use it. I didn't use it for years.
Oh, really? Never.
And now it's pretty much my main amp because with Lori and Philip, we're playing a lot of really small venues, and that thing is just perfect. It just sounds beautiful.
It does. It sounds fantastic with it and stuff.
So it's between that and another old one that I always called the Beast.
Yeah.
And
how was the Beast doing?
I retubed it a few months ago and it just came back to life. I was like, man, I don't believe this.
Is it still lean over? Are you doing anything with the wood, or is it
no? It's still Copsaline. but nothing sounds like it.
I know. When the beast cranks up, man, that thing rocks on pretty good. Well, hey, Denny, we're out of time here. As with everyone I do, I always ask, is there any advice you can give to musicians or anybody before we go?
I would say one time Albert Collins said to me, and
You're talking the Iceman here.
the Iceman, the Ice Pick, who was a really, really great guy.
Was he?
He was an awesome guy.
Okay.
I talked to him a few different times, but the first time I ever met him, he said to me, if you're going to play the blues, play the blues. He says, if you're going to play metal, play metal. You know, if you're going to play jazz, hit them with some jazz, man. And it was so, it was so simple and kind of stupid, but that's exactly it. It's like whatever it is you're going to do, be true to that and do that and give it all to that. You've got to leave a piece of you behind there on that stage. And if you're not true to what you're doing, that's not going to happen and people aren't going to connect. But the point is just not even with music, with anything, if you're a plumber, well, get in there and do the job absolutely the best that you possibly can and walk away from it feeling good, like, yeah, I really got it, And it's the same thing with music. And
you do that. There's some great words of advice.
I hope so.
Well, Denny, I always appreciate it. And again, we go back to WMJ, which was fantastic. And we'll have you back on with the kids, I think, this summer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'd love to.
All right. Now,
speaking of which, before we leave, I've got to say hello to Jose, Lori, and Philip, who are listening up in Montreal.
And I got to say hi to your mom and dad, of course, Ray and Rosie. Always appreciate it. I had a great time. So, all right. This is Iconic Radio. Again, Bill McDonald will be up shortly with Radio Classics at 11. Always, Bill, thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your station, XCRS. And that'll be it for now. We'll see you next week on Iconic Radio.
Ciao for now.